The sun hung low over the turquoise waters of the Andaman Sea, spilling a golden shimmer across the endless waves. The morning of December 26, 2004, seemed like any other tropical paradise day in Khao Lak, Thailand. Families were out for breakfast, tourists floated lazily in the hotel pool, and the sound of palm leaves brushing against the sea breeze mixed with laughter and the call of seagulls. For Maria Bennett, her husband Henry, and their 3 sons, Lucas, Thomas, and Simon, it was supposed to be another peaceful morning in paradise, one more day of their long-awaited Christmas vacation. Maria sipped her coffee on the veranda of the Orchid Resort, the horizon framed by the blue of the sea and the white arc of sand. She had been feeling something strange since dawn, a slight unease, a pressure in the air, as though nature itself was holding its breath. But she pushed it aside, smiling as Simon, the youngest, chased a gecko across the deck, his laughter filling the quiet morning. Henry adjusted his sunglasses, flipping through his travel notes. A financial analyst by profession, he rarely had time to disconnect from work, yet this trip was meant to change that, to reconnect, to breathe. Lucas, their eldest, was lounging by the pool, pretending to read but mostly watching other families play. He was 13, caught between childhood and the seriousness of the adult world. Maria watched him and thought how fast he was growing. At 10:58 a.m., she stood and stretched, calling to her family that she was going for a quick swim before lunch. The water was warm, welcoming. The boys joined her, splashing and laughing as Henry recorded them on the small camcorder they had brought from home. Everything felt perfect, like a postcard of joy frozen in time, until the birds went silent. A deep rumble rolled through the ground. The palm trees trembled, and a hush fell across the beach. People turned toward the sea. The water had drawn back, exposing the coral bed and stranded fish wriggling helplessly in the sand. Some tourists ran forward, curious, phones and cameras raised. Maria frowned. Her instincts whispered danger, but before she could call her children back, the ocean returned. It came not as a wave but as a wall, a monstrous surge of brown, roaring water taller than the palms themselves. The sound was like an explosion, 1,000 engines screaming together. In the blink of an eye, the horizon disappeared. Henry shouted, grabbing Thomas and Simon, but the force hit them before he could move another step. The world turned into chaos, water, sand, debris, and screams blending into one deafening roar. Maria was ripped from her children's hands. She felt herself slammed against a wall, the pressure crushing her chest, the water spinning her like a rag doll. Every breath burned, she tried to reach for something, anything, but there was nothing solid left. She opened her eyes underwater, all she saw was brown and red, the color of earth and blood. For a fleeting second she thought, this is it. We're all gone. But the instinct to live is stronger than any thought. She fought, kicking, clawing toward the light above. Her lungs felt like fire. When her head finally broke the surface, she coughed violently, gasping for air. Around her was a wasteland, where the hotel once stood, now there was only floating wreckage, trees, cars, furniture, bodies. She spun around, screaming her sons' names. Lucas. Thomas. Simon. Her voice was hoarse, nearly lost in the roaring water. Then, faintly, a cry, a boy's voice calling back. Mom. Maria turned and saw Lucas, half buried in debris, clinging to a tree trunk as the torrent dragged him along. Without thinking, she let the current carry her toward him, slamming into floating branches and sharp wood. Pain shot through her leg, she didn't realize yet that a large wound had opened near her knee. She reached Lucas, grabbing his arm just as another wave tried to pull him away. They held on to each other, crying, shaking. Don't let go. Maria shouted over the roar. We'll find the others. Hold on. The water kept pushing them inland, through what used to be the resort, now a shattered maze of broken walls and twisted metal. Each time Maria tried to stand, another surge knocked her down. Together, she and Lucas floated with the current, clinging to debris. They passed a man screaming for his wife, a dog paddling madly through the water, a baby's toy spinning in circles before vanishing beneath the mud. Finally, the current slowed, and they were swept into what looked like a flooded forest. Everything was silent except the trickle of receding water and distant cries for help. The world smelled of salt, mud, and fear. Maria and Lucas managed to pull themselves onto a tree, panting, shaking. "Mom, your leg!" Lucas gasped. Blood was seeping through her torn shorts, staining the muddy water below. Maria looked down. The gash was deep, but she forced herself to stay calm. "It's nothing," she lied. "We have to get to higher ground." Lucas helped her as they moved through the shattered landscape, stepping over sharp branches and pieces of glass. Everywhere they looked were signs of destruction: overturned cars, palm trunks impaled through walls, children crying for parents who might never come. Maria's heart broke with every face she saw. After nearly an hour of painful walking, they reached a patch of higher ground, what once was a small road. Exhausted, they collapsed beside a fallen billboard. The sky had turned gray, heavy with silence. Lucas held his mother's hand tightly. "Do you think Dad and the boys are okay?" he whispered. Maria's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him yes, that Henry was strong, that the little ones were safe, but the truth was she didn't know. "We'll find them," she said softly. "We just have to keep moving." Hours passed. The sun beat down mercilessly, drying the mud on their skin. Maria's wound worsened, she was growing dizzy. Lucas, realizing she could barely stand, took charge. "We need help," he said. "We have to find someone." They followed the faint sound of voices through the ruined fields. Eventually, they stumbled upon a small group of villagers, locals helping survivors. The people were covered in mud but alive. One man, seeing Maria collapse, rushed forward. "Hospital," he said in broken English, pointing toward the hills. "We take you." With their help, Maria and Lucas climbed onto an old truck filled with other injured tourists. As the vehicle rumbled over debris-covered roads, Maria looked out at what was once paradise, now nothing but ruin. Corpses lined the roadside, families wandered aimlessly, searching faces among the dead. Lucas squeezed her hand tighter. "Don't close your eyes, Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. They arrived at a makeshift medical center, a damaged school building turned into a hospital. Inside, chaos reigned. Doctors and nurses rushed between patients lying on the floor, their cries echoing through the hallways. Maria was placed on a cot. Lucas refused to leave her side. A nurse cleaned her wound, but the pain was unbearable. Maria bit her lip, tears streaming down her face as the nurse stitched her leg without anesthesia. Lucas tried to help by fetching water, wiping mud from her face, doing anything to stay busy. He looked around at the dozens of people, some silent, some screaming, all broken by the same disaster. For the first time, the boy felt the heavy weight of the world, the realization that safety was an illusion. Night fell, bringing no comfort. The electricity was gone, candles flickered against the cracked walls. Maria's fever worsened. She drifted in and out of consciousness, mumbling the names of her husband and sons. Lucas sat beside her, holding her hand, whispering stories to keep her awake. "Remember the pool, Mom? You said we'd go back tomorrow. Maybe we still can, when this is over." She smiled faintly. "You're so brave," she whispered. "Don't be scared." Meanwhile, somewhere miles away, Henry was alive. When the wave hit, he had managed to cling to a palm tree with Thomas and Simon, both terrified and shivering. The water had pulled them far from the beach, but somehow they survived. Henry's first thought was Maria and Lucas. Were they alive? The guilt ate at him as he carried the younger boys through wreckage, calling out their names into the emptiness. By dawn, the next day, helicopters roared overhead. Relief teams had begun to arrive. The scale of the destruction was beyond comprehension, whole villages erased, thousands missing. In the hospital,